Our story begins in 1875, when construction began on the Severn Railway Bridge between Sharpness and Lydney, crossing the River Severn. Anyone who has walked out onto the Severn mud will know how difficult this is. Feel sorry for the men having to do this every day. It was finally opened on the 19th of October 1879 to both passenger and goods trains travelling on a single track across the bridge, operated by the Severn and Wye Railway. In competition with the Severn and Wye Railway was the Severn Tunnel, travelling beneath the Severn where today you see the Prince of Wales Bridge. Opened in 1886, it carried rail traffic from London to South Wales, still in use today as an important rail connection. We move ahead to Monday the 24th of October 1960. I was a 16-year-old deckhand on the tanker Wysdale H, owned by John Harker Limited and based on the Severn at Gloucester. We, with our sister vessel the Wasdale H that day, had travelled up to Worcester to unload our cargoes of petrol and returned to Gloucester that evening. That same day, the black oiler Arkandale H had left Gloucester bound for Swansea. The following day, on the 25th of October 1960, at 6 o'clock in the morning, we on the Wysdale H and those on the Wasdale H both left Gloucester together down the Gloucester and Sharpness Canal for Sharpness, and then sailing out into the Severn Estuary and down to Avonmouth. That morning was a lovely, lovely morning, clear blue skies, a warm sun, and eventually we arrived at Avonmouth about 11 a.m. We locked up, went to the oil dock, and both loaded with petrol and waited for the night tide. 8 p.m. on that evening, and the tanker barges Wysdale H and Wasdale H start their engines, slip their moorings, and head down the dock to the large sea lock. First lock of the tide, and it is full of small craft, mostly bound for Sharpness. Whilst outside, on tide in the Severn Estuary, is the Arkandale H, back to Sharpness from Swansea, as the outer gates open, and all the vessels proceed out into the estuary. In total, 13 vessels form a convoy and travel up the Severn Estuary towards Sharpness. Me, on the Wysdale H, I go down to the accommodation and I make the crew a hot drink and take it to the wheelhouse and then vanish into the warmth of the accommodation. About 9:30 the bell rang in the accommodation, which meant I had to go on deck to see what the skipper wanted. I went up on deck and I was in the thickest fog I'd ever seen in my life. Pea super it was, and the skipper yells to me, "Get the mate and get up on the bow and listen for the foghorn off Sharpness." Anyway, called the mate and up we go to the bow, and it was eerie. Couldn't see nothing, just a lapping of water round the hull. Well, at that point we were swinging off Sharpness, punching the tide, ready to go in. And out of the gloom suddenly came our sister vessel, the Wasdale H. She hit us sideways, and no damage done, and bounced off us, and I spoke to the young lad on board, Malcolm Hart, say, "See you tomorrow, Malcolm," and off they go into the fog. The Arkandale H was about to enter the port when a tug in tow blocked his path. He went astern, and the Severn's deadly tide swept him up to the old dock entrance. With the Arkandale H lying in slack water, suddenly the Wasdale H appears, and George Thompson, skipper of the Arkandale H, shouts to Jimmy Dew, skipper of the Wasdale H, "Lie alongside me, Jimmy, and when it's high water, we will return to the dock entrance." But suddenly the fierce tide got hold of both tankers and took them sideways up the Severn, and then the two tankers had gone sideways up the Severn towards the Severn Railway Bridge. The Wasdale H hit one of the tall columns first, immediately turning on her side, tipping 3 of the 4 crew members into the river. George Thompson was thrown to the side of the Arkandale H wheelhouse. In a daze, he stumbled out onto deck to see the tall bridge shaking above him. Suddenly, 2 spans of the bridge drop across both tank tops, causing the explosion. George goes aft to see 2 of the 4-man crew stood there in fear. He gives them a life ring each and urges them to jump. They are both non-swimmers. George jumps, they don't. Jimmy Jew on the Wasdale H clambers out of the wheelhouse and climbs onto the Arkandale H. He goes aft, speaks to the 2 men and leads them to the side, and all 3 jump into the river. One of the non-swimmers, engineer Jack Cooper, aged 43, was swept to the stern of the Arkandale H, and the still revolving propeller caught him on his back. High water had passed, and now the ebbing tide was ablaze, bearing down on Jack. Scared of being burnt to death, he took his life ring off and slipped under the water to drown. But he popped up. The burning field had passed, and by luck found himself on a tump of sand. A rowing boat came out of the fog, with 2 men rowing it, and picked up Jack. That night, 5 men were killed. The fire service attended the incident, but there was little they could do until daylight. It had been arranged for an air-sea rescue helicopter from Devon to fly to Sharpnest to lift firemen and equipment out to the 2 wrecks, but it never came. It was broken. So the men walked through the mud with all their kit out onto the wrecks. No easy task. Eventually, in 1967, demolition of the bridge began. A Gloucester company was awarded the contract, but they got their plans wrong and they went bankrupt. Another company took over, and in 1970 the last remaining part of the Severn Railway Bridge was removed. Today, you can still see the wrecks of the tankers. I have walked out to them twice, but never again, for it is far too dangerous. This film has only told a short version of what actually happened that fateful night. For the full detailed story, please buy my book, Severn Bridge Disaster, available from Amazon at less than the price of a pint of beer. Thank you for watching my film. If you liked it, why not subscribe to my channel and hit the like button? Meanwhile, I look forward to meeting you all again next week with a new film for you to enjoy. Bye!